You hear the words sobriety and recovery used interchangeably all the time, but there is a distinct difference. And if you want to live a fulfilling life without alcohol, it's really important that you understand what these words mean. It's common for people who have never heard this explained before to end up saying, I've been sober for a while, but I just realized I haven't been recovering. If you've ever felt confused and wondered what the difference is, we're here to answer your questions.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery Podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full, there's no space left for alcohol.
As always, don't forget to leave a review or a rating for this podcast wherever you're listening from. Those reviews go a really long way in getting our content out to more people, and that's our ultimate goal, to get the conversations to the people who need to hear them. And if you've already left a review, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right, everyone, it is nice to see you all here. It is going to be me introducing everyone tonight. Julie is not available, so your host is Steve. Nice to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to start out with introductions, and I will start out with, we have John and Johnny. I'm going to start out with Johnny. Johnny, how are you tonight?
I am wonderful, my man. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. It's good to have you here.
My name is Johnny Joy. Yes, that is my real name. I stole my wife's name when we got married because it was just too cool, the last name. I was in radio for about 8.5 years, and so I was Johnny Joy on the radio. Everyone thought that was my stage name. But in fact, my real name, I am approaching 10 years sober. That'll be March 15th. I had to look. 3,566 days as of today.
Right on.
5,136 minutes, if you're counting.
Who's counting, right? 1 minute.
Who's counting? Yeah, this app's been running. Apparently, I've saved $576,000 as well. I lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I've been here the majority of my life. I've lived up and down the Front Range. I spent a little time in Newport Beach, California, on my second stint in recovery. I am now currently, self-employed. I left radio to focus, one, on being a dad. I've got a 4-year-old and 8-month-old. They're absolutely amazing. I've got an incredible wife. We just moved into a brand new home, which is our dream home. Never thought it'd be possible, but another one of those wonderful things about recovery. And I'm currently developing an app. The app is available in the Play Store and App Stores called Sobriety, and it's a complete and total resource for all things recovery. It doesn't tell you how to get sober. It just tells you ways that you might find recovery that fit you best.
Really cool. And that's how we found each other. And that's how we met. That's really awesome. Thank you for being here, Johnny.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for everything that you do. Next, we will go with Robbie.
Hello, I'm Robbie. I live in Rapid City, South Dakota. Today is 386 days of sobriety.
Yes.
Thank you. So I have a podcast. I'm a co-host of a podcast called Golden Hour Adventures, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Robbie. Last minute, really appreciate it. Next, we will go with John.
What's up? I'm John Cerrone, author of Parables, Musings from an Addict on the Journey Toward Wholeness, which is like a philosophy and self-help book about my struggles with addiction and recovery. I'm a little over 4.5 years sober from drugs and alcohol. I also run a general wellness podcast called Feel Free. Yeah, just happy to be here. Hopefully it can inspire people to live a better life, you know?
Absolutely. Happy to have you finally join us. We've followed John, and John's followed us for pretty much since the very beginning, since we hopped on Instagram. So it's finally nice to sit down and have a conversation with you, John. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And last but not least, Hayley, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are y'all? Hayley Delashmit or Hayley D or Giggles. I'm going 42 days sober. Stop laughing. 342 days sober. I kind of just post on my platform, which is my personal space for the most part, about my sobriety journey. And the reason why I got sober was because the actual disease of cirrhosis caused by alcohol. So that's pretty much what I do. And spread hope to the hopeless.
You absolutely do that, Hayley. So thank you very much for being here and joining on the conversation. And at the very last minute, I picked up the phone and called Hayley and then said, hey, can you join us? And then she hopped on Zoom. So here she is. I really appreciate you spending some time with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in. We often hear people use the words sobriety and recovery interchangeably. I think it's important that we make a distinction, though. It's important for people who have quit drinking alcohol or using drugs to understand the difference between sobriety and recovery. So how do you define them? What is recovery to you? And tell us some stories about what that looks like in your life.
So just fire away.
The floor is yours. All of yours.
Okay. Sobriety versus recovery. I mean, if you want to look at the basics, sobriety is going to be, that you are free of any influence of mind-altering substances, be it alcohol, drugs, even pharmaceuticals, because a lot of people think that doesn't really count, but it counts, certainly if it's not being used in the appropriate manner. So that would be the first basis term of sobriety. Recovery, to me, is the sobriety of what's happening between your ears. The term sobriety is what's happening inside your body, what you're putting in your body, what's affecting your brain, but the recovery portion is clearing up the mess that caused everything to go haywire in the first place. Because I know a lot of sober people that are far from recovered. The term dry drunk, or there's a number of different variations of it, but recovery to me. So, and it doesn't really go over well because I'll go to an AA meeting, for a friend. I don't typically go to meetings much anymore. I've kind of found my own path that works. But, when I say my name's Johnny, I'm a recovered alcoholic, it doesn't really go over terribly well because I've recovered as of right now from, the disease of alcoholism. Could it come back? Sure. It's like saying, I'm kind of in remission from like a cancer. Can it come back? Yes. And I need to be very mindful of that. But as of right now, I'm recovered from it. And it's something I monitor, obviously, on a daily basis. But the recovery portion is the self-work, is the self-help that you're doing, reading books like John wrote, studying personal development, doing podcasts like this, seeing a shrink, going to meetings, whatever it takes to untangle why it is that you behave the way you did. Roughly.
Keep it on going. Who's next?
I'll go. When I started this journey in sobriety, I just started all alone. I had another person with me, my sister, that we both decided to make decision. But I learned really fast I needed connection. And those first 90 days, I didn't have any real connection. And I was struggling. I was struggling bad. I didn't know who I was. That's still something I'm working on. That's the recovery part for me, definitely. But it was taking one day at a time, just trying to make it through the day. And I didn't feel good. It was hard. But then once I got some connection and started learning what real recovery is, that's when the growth started happening. And kind of like you were saying, Johnny Joy, you have to grow. I think if you choose a life of sobriety and you don't continue to grow, you're just still going around as that same person. You're just not using any substances. So for me, continuing to grow, find out who I really am as a person, because I numbed pretty much from 16 to 44 of my life. I never knew who I was. I just numbed myself all the time. Then when I stopped using, that's when I really started learning about myself. And it's really night and day. And I know if I don't take the steps to keep growing, I will fall back, take a step backwards to where I was when I quit using substances. And that's not the life I want to live. So I guess that's where recovery is for me right now, is growing, learning about myself, and having the courage to take those leaps of faith, to trust my instinct and keep moving forward to be a better person for my future.
Love it, man. Love it.
Can't really have one without the other, can you?
Could you hear me?
Yeah, go for it, John.
For sure. So sobriety to me is more like without getting too philosophical, it's like a state of being, you know, the abstinence from mind altering chemicals and substances. So, you know, alcohol and hard drugs. You know, I'm not going to throw shade at two of my favorite chemicals, which would be nicotine and caffeine, because in recovery, I've learned in meetings and with my mentor, you know, the nicotine and the caffeine are okay. They're not like the other two, you know, but which leads to the recovery part, which is a process. You know, the sobriety is a prerequisite for recovery, in my opinion. You know, in order to fully recover, you need to be completely sober. So recovery to me isn't really just healing from the consequences and the turmoil that our addictions caused. It's healing from the problems we had before that we were trying to run from originally, which is what Johnny Joy had originally said too. Also with what Robbie said, you were saying that you were alone during your first days in recovery. It was the same thing with me. I had social anxiety. I actually had a therapist and a mentor. I didn't even hit up meetings and stuff. I just kind of like strong-armed my sobriety from the start, from alcohol, cocaine, ecstasy, a whole bunch of different things. I did a lot of self-work, and I actually slipped up in the last year, not with my sobriety. I'm still sober to this day, but if you're not doing the correct work, like, you know, playing too many video games, you're eating fast food, you know, you start to let the addictive personality seep in, the one that originally destroyed you. So after the last couple months of taking my health seriously again, I've now realized that recovery needs to be taken just as seriously as my sobriety, you know? Otherwise, like everyone's been saying, you got your dry drunks, you got people who are sober that aren't really looking to find out who they really are, you know? And I'm not trying to run and hide from who I am anymore, because I know deep down that every addict has a beautiful soul. You just got to do the work to find it, you know? So, yeah.
I'm going to go up a little bit what both of y'all said. So I wasn't really alone as far as people around me. I had an absent husband in my house. He just let me be sober as soon as I got out of the hospital. So I felt alone, and I went straight to social media, and I started, you know, looking for hashtags of people that are similar stories, because I was a closet alcoholic, huge closet alcoholic. I'm saying I didn't have a chance to even think about having a sober life, because I just went from straight buck every day to death. I died. I didn't have a chance. So that's what happened on January 11th of this year. That was my experience of getting sober, 17 minutes of death. And then, you know, about a month in the hospital afterwards. So I've been recovering this entire time. And so I got out on social media, and that's where I found my people, like where I could finally decide, like, or figure out who Hayley was, not Hayley Delashmit, not just the girl that just sits at home and doesn't go anywhere, because that's not me. So I've just been this whole past 11 months recovering, just so I can get, hopefully by the grace of God, get a liver transplant. So it's just a constant recover every day. And then, like you said, the sober, like the staying sober, the space between, like there's no outside like drugs or alcohol, but then you had to recover and restore everything there too. So I kind of felt like the way my doctor had explained it when I woke up and got out, he said your whole brain will rewire itself. And that was like, okay, well, I have to decide who I am, right? The past 11 months trying to figure out who am I now. So doing the steps and recovering out loud has been great for me on my journey.
Recovery has been a whole laundry list of discovering who Steve really is and allowing myself to make mistakes and then getting back up and then trying again, because I don't think we in general are going to figure out what that looks like until I start figuring out where I'm aligned and what things are good for me and what things I actually like. And I think that's part of my recovery journey too, because I liked a lot of the things that other people liked because they liked them and I wanted to be liked. And because of that, I didn't know really what, like, let's go right down to my favorite color. It was just, it was this repetition of stuff that was to make sure that I didn't stand out from the crowd so I could try and fit into the crowd. And then until I really found out and then started to find out what Steve likes and who Steve is and who his people are, like who do I actually connect with? How do I feel? All of these things, sobriety was really the what. It is, what am I going to do to fix my physical problem, my physical addiction? What am I going to do to stop that? And John, you talked about not throwing shade to nicotine or caffeine, right? Like I won't throw shade to caffeine and I won't throw shade to nicotine either. I mean, it's all about what works for you and when, and that journey is yours and yours alone to determine. I quit smoking at about 8 months in to my journey, and I said that was enough. I got mad. See, when I quit something, I get really pissed off at myself, and I say, like, that's it, I'm done. It wasn't like that one with alcohol. The lie was just too big to carry. When it came to alcohol, it was just, I'm done with this. It wasn't so lonely for me right at the beginning because I went and found, I didn't know I was looking for connection. I just went and found people. I showed up to a meeting and I was welcomed. And I was like, this is weird because it's absolutely terrifying. But recovery is the how, right? Is how am I going to stay sober today? And if that means doing nothing and I'm successfully sober, then, and I've had a lot of those days where I've done Sweet Jack and I've felt really low and I've felt depressed and lonely and all of those things. But recovery was really figuring out how to survive all of those uncomfortable moments and then turn around and learn a healthy emotional response to what life throws at me.
I mean, life's always going to be uncomfortable, and we think somehow in sobriety, especially like right when you first get sober, one, you think everyone's going to celebrate you. They're not. But, the social media will celebrate you. That's plenty fun. But, the friends in your family that you may have, screwed over, or, the trail of wreckage you left, people don't quite forgive that, even though you've got 14 days sober, you might think that you've got it figured out. And just exactly what you said, Steve, is figuring out how to deal with life's problems on life's terms and doing it sober. I mean, now at almost 10 years, it's like a reflex for me now, but I would also be lying if I said that, there aren't moments, where I go, you know what? But I look around.
Would be nice right now, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I also tell people I treat it like a peanut allergy is like, I love peanuts. I love them. But if I eat them, they'll effing kill me. That's how I got to treat alcohol. But, and I put on my social media yesterday. It's like, I'll turn this right now. That's a fully stocked bar right there. That's for my wife and guests when they come over. I can't avoid it. And I'm not going to make my problem everyone else's problem. So that also took a lot of work. And that's the recovery piece. The saying, yes, that's there. It's everywhere. But if I'm going to go by the mantra that I could never be around alcohol and I could never be around drugs, that means I'm never going to go to a concert again. I'm never going to go to a Bronco game again. I'm never going to, go to a party again. I'm never going to go meet my friends at a bar again. You have to learn, and I'm not saying right away, I'm not saying in your first month or your first year, if you're not comfortable, don't do it, but just learning to know what recovery means to you. I $100,000 later and 4 30-day treatment plans that didn't work for me. It finally took me laying in the emergency room with a 0.54 BAC. And, all the doctors looking around and said, like, you shouldn't even be alive. Like nurses, like, how are you even talking? My sister died of a fentanyl overdose 21 years ago. And fentanyl was a thing 21 years ago. And, she had her master's degree. She was a teacher. She's a real smart gal, but my dad abandoned us when, she was 13 years old. Screwed her up. That's her trauma, And finally, I did a 5-day detox. I was on benzos and booze and drinking 8 bottles of wine a day, plus a 12-pack, plus 12 milligrams of Ativan. I mean, I was messed up. Hey, and the first thing, I finally found a therapist. The first thing he said to me goes, just tell me, why can't you pull your head out of your ass? His first words to me. And I was like, you son of a bitch. I don't know. From that point on, I was like, it's all my fault. It really is all my fault. Now, what happened to me as a kid, that wasn't my fault. I was a kid. My dad left. That wasn't my fault. Some shitty things went down. Maybe not my fault, but my response to them and my reaction to them and my recovery from them, 100% my responsibility. And so once I started gathering that, I was like, well, shit, this will actually maybe be a little bit more simpler. It won't necessarily be easy, but it's way more simple than I realized.
Taking ownership of your own stuff is absolutely terrifying. It's terrifying. It really is. And that's recovery, right? Like taking ownership of your own stuff and realizing what's yours and what isn't. And then what do I need to do to move through it?
Yeah.
Go for it, John. John's got words on his tongue. Now I could see it.
I was gonna say it was funny when you said your friends and family aren't gonna praise you for your 14 days sober, and that resonated with me because like even when I got to a year and 2 years, like everybody celebrates that because they knew what had happened, just the trail of wreckage that you described, and I think it's interesting because people don't praise you all the time. Sometimes, like you said, you can't avoid the booze, you can't avoid the parties. I still like going to concerts too, live music, the drugs and the alcohol are everywhere. But knowing when there's a limit has been my part of recovery. It's like, okay, I just went to a wedding a couple weeks ago and people are asking me to go out to a bar or a concert this next month. I'm like, I just don't feel like it. I'm just going to stay in and chill, and taking accountability for that is, I used to get sad in the first year or two. I'm like, I'm missing out on life, and now after, 3 or 4 years, I'm like, I'm so happy to just have my peace of mind when I say no to dodging life, because I know that as I'm dodging it, I'm getting healthier, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting more connected to myself. I don't have to feel obligated to do shit,
I want to tell in your smile, man. You can tell in your smile. It's there, man.
I know, but some people, like even the people that praise you for your sobriety, it's like sometimes they throw a little like snide remark and it's just like, oh, why can't you just come out, or just some shit like that, and I'm just like, I don't really care, I'm literally reaching the pinnacle of my health mentally, physically, and emotionally right now, and I'm just not going to let I'm going to let the words bounce off me. It's like you're wearing a bulletproof vest for the world's shit right now. And it's invigorating. It is. But it is all trial and error, the recovery process. Like I mentioned before, I had a couple bad habits in the last year. I dealt with loss of some childhood pets, stayed sober through it all from the drugs and alcohol, but I started smoking cigars, eating fast food burritos and ice cream. You watch the spiral effect, right? And I wasn't taking my recovery seriously. And it took my one buddy, Brandon, coming into town. He's 11 months or 12 months sober from heroin and alcohol. And he just came in a month ago and he just lit a fire under my ass. And I'm just like, damn, he's got that energy, like that love for life right now. And I remember having that in early sobriety. I'm like ready for life. And I hit one bump and I'm not proud to be myself again. So the recovery, like Steve originally said, it's just getting back up, It's finding out what works for you. And Just got to be around sober people. I think that's what recovery is all about.
I'm glad you guys mentioned a couple things with, concerts and outings and stuff like that. I don't think that gets talked about enough, because a lot of times when we, take the choice of sobriety, the message is to give up everything that could, and I hate using this word, trigger you. But for a lot of people, like myself and you guys, I love concerts. I love going out and doing all that kinds of stuff. And that wasn't something I was willing to give up. I was willing to give up alcohol and drugs, but I wasn't going to allow myself to give up music and concerts and parties and other things. So right off the bat, I had to make a conscious decision, like, I need to make sure that I can be around it and not use it. And you hear a lot that that's not the right way to go. And it really frustrates me to hear that, because if you have a love for something that doesn't have to do with who you were and you enjoy it, you should still be able to go out there and enjoy it, because that's part of who you are. Going into recovery is about making your life more full, more pleasurable. And to give something up like that, mean that's taking something else away from you that shouldn't be taken away.
Good point. Totally. Hayley, you got anything on your mind?
Well, I can relate a little bit, but I think it's because I have to have friends that are in recovery or sober for this reason. That because as a closet drunk, no one ever got to see Hayley outside of her house have fun. And I'm actually a lot of fun. So I'm like, how do you make friends? And like, I'm so much fun. You want to hang out? I'm 37 years old. I don't know how to make friends that are like, unless they're in recovery, because they're not going to understand my personality. They're not going to get my jokes. So I guess I do always, in my recovery, sometimes I feel really isolated when it's not like my friends in, like, on social media recovery, my groups I do on there, or just, I do feel, I don't want to go back to being isolated, because that was my drinking problem. I was just isolated all the time. So that I do struggle with that for my recovery process. Even though I'm not going to relapse, just because I know that I will die thanks to that liver. But yeah, that does get isolated, and it could just, creep in when I least expect it.
The recovery takes a level of maintenance, right?
Yeah. It's like thing, and they think strangers will congratulate you, but people you know forever, like, yeah, okay, good. Only thing I get is, yay, you're permanent DD.
It's interesting. The people that I surrounded myself before I quit are very different people that I surround myself with now. And it's taken me a while. I remember going to parties and stuff like that where they would buy me a whole bunch of booze and I showed up with water. And I was terrified to go to the party because not the party itself, but I didn't want to have to answer that question. Hey, Steve, we got a whole bunch of beer for you over here in this cooler, blah, blah, blah. It's all craft beer. And that the version of Steve that they knew before that was, not 3 or 4 months sober would have been all over that. I would have emptied it. But the version that showed up actually had to say, no, I'm not going to drink today. And everyone looked at me like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And gave me that look. Are you okay? And I'm literally standing there smiling, right? Like I'm standing and my armpits are sweating. Like I am uncomfortable in this position. Like, sure, there was sweat in places that we don't need to talk about too, but my armpits were sweating for sure. Like I'm so super nervous in that situation, having to turn around and face all of these people that I had called friends because I was terrified of being judged or whatever it was. And I just kept saying, no, I'm not going to drink. And talk about people not wearing glasses, but having 4 eyes and looking like you're an alien, right? Because that was the Steve they knew forever.
Yeah.
But eventually they get to either know a new version of you if they stick around, or a different version of people that show up to support you happen. I think there's a level of loneliness that happens in recovery when we try and start finding, I know it happened for me, when I try and start finding the people that lift me up instead of pull me down, and discerning between those two is incredibly difficult, because some of them are loved ones and some of them are married, and like I'm divorced because that relationship didn't work out. Drunk Steve and sober Steve are two very different people. Drunk Steve ran away from his life. Sober Steve is learning how to look at life and face it head on and build a relationship with myself. Recovery.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's like three main types of people I've noticed too that kind of fit into that category where, you got the people that are all staring at you, the ones that say, oh, come on, just have a drink. Like, and then they get kind of angry with you. And then once you kind of look into that, you realize they're just throwing a mirror onto themselves because they don't like what they see in themselves in you, because they see someone they knew that used to drink really heavily. Or maybe you're brand new, you don't even know this person, and you're in a crowded bar on a Friday night, it's New Year's Eve, whatever it is, and you're not having a cocktail. And that shines a light on them they know that they've got a problem, but they would rather be surrounded by other people that have that same problem. The other person is obviously the sober person, or the person that just really doesn't care. That's like, okay, cool, which is the most preferable person. I find them to be not as common as the other two. And then there's my favorite that will come up to me and like, I'll be like, no, I've been sober for almost 10 years. It was out of absolute necessity. Like, mine it was life or death. It's what I do now. And they're like, I thought sometimes think I shouldn't maybe drink as much, like, I'm only just drinking tonight. I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't care what you're doing. But this isn't about you. You could drink Listerine at 8 a.m. in the morning like I used to. I don't care. If you need help and you want someone to talk to, I'll gladly give you my number and we can start to chit chat and I can tell you what worked for me. But you do you. I don't care. You don't have to tell me, and I'm not upset that you're drinking. I've had people come up to me like when I'm at a bar and they're like, hey, sorry I'm drinking in front of you. I'm like, I'm at a bar. I mean, yeah. If you came into like an AA meeting with a bottle of Jack, I would be like, that's maybe not the right time and place, but I'm at a bar. I'm at a Broncos game, whatever. No, cheers. I'll have a root beer. It's fine.
Right.
My best friend took me to a bar on my 6-month sober anniversary.
Here's the test.
Choose, but choose wisely.
Yeah.
Wow. The poor bartender was so confused. She's like, that was so she only drank at home and thought we didn't know. Anyway, so it was really funny.
As a retired bartender, like I promise you, bartenders are thrilled to see us, literally, because there's one less idiot they're going to have to deal with. Chances are we know how to tip. We make their life easier, and we kind of keep our eye out for each other. That's one of the things in Sobriety, the app I developed, is there's a whole mocktail list, so people that are new in recovery can reach into their pod, grab their phone, pull up a whole list of mocktails, show it to the bartender, and say, "Hey, can you make me one of these?" So they don't even have to have that conversation. A lot of times, if you have that glass that has the lime, the little black straw sticking out of it, no one will ask you a darn thing if you don't want to talk about it. It certainly beats like having the big red soda cup, because then you feel like the spotlight's following you around the room. Sometimes just having a glass in your hand feels good.
Check that out. That's your app, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll definitely get that shared, and it'll be in the show notes, and it'll be in all of the places, Johnny. So I don't know. I think I'll wrap this up here, everyone.
Just keep going and going if we don't.
Oh, I know. It's all good. I love the conversation and the different perspectives and the different lives that we've led, that we're sharing with everyone, the different experiences. I think the nuts and bolts of all of this is sobriety is removing the substance from our life. And then recovery is substance or substances or whatever it is, whatever's removing us from actually having that clarity. And then recovery is the how. What are we going to do to move through life and have like a healthy emotional response to our surroundings. Like it's new. It's almost like you're a kid again sometimes, because you get to re-experience everything all over again with this fresh set of eyes. And it's actually a really wonderful discovery experience if we let ourselves have that. We talked about taking accountability. And John, you said every addict has a beautiful soul. We just have to go through recovery to find it. And I thought that was a really beautiful way to sum that up. For everyone else that's listening right now, Julie has a thing that she likes to say or talk about when she's talking about people new in recovery. And she says, I wish I could hand you a photo album of what your life could look like, or what your life will look like after a year or two of sobriety. Like, show you what your future would look like if you just quit and started to put some of that work in, because it changes and it's wonderful. And if you listen to us right now, you can hear all of these experiences from all different levels of sobriety, and there's smiles and there's laughter. Like, there's a lot of change that's involved, but it's one of the most beautiful experiences I think and I don't think anyone's going to argue with me. It's one of the most beautiful experiences you've ever had. And I know it is for me. So I want to say thank you, Johnny Joy. Thank you, John. Thank you, Robbie. And thank you, Hayley, for being here tonight and for sharing your experiences and your hope. Thank you guys so much. To our listeners, as always, we want to thank you for taking the time to listen today, and we hope that this episode has shed some light on your path of recovery. If you found it helpful, please take a few minutes to rate and review Through the Glass Recovery podcast on whatever platform you listen from. It's a great way to let us know you appreciate what we're doing.